Welcome to Midnight Whispers. Tonight we step into an abandoned house, a place long left behind, yet still echoing with whispers in the dark. Are they voices from the past, or something that never truly left? And why do those whispers seem to be calling out to someone still living? Stay with us and uncover the chilling mystery behind Voices from the Empty House. If you enjoy eerie, emotional, and mysterious stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. And turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a strange tale from Midnight Whispers, where forgotten secrets always find their way back. This was supposed to be a new beginning, a calm chapter after the storm. After months of emotional turbulence, Elise had packed up her belongings, left the noise of the city behind, and moved into an old house on the outskirts of a small town she had never heard of before. The house had been abandoned for years, its windows like eyes watching her, its roof covered in moss and forgotten memories. The house had been listed for an unusually low price, so low it felt suspicious, but Elise didn't ask too many questions. She needed quiet. She needed space to think, to breathe, to simply exist. So when the agent handed her the keys without even checking her background, she signed without hesitation. The first time she saw it in person, the house looked bigger than she had imagined. A two-story Victorian relic, its white paint peeling and yellowed with age, the porch sagging slightly as if weary from waiting. The air carried the scent of old wood and wild vines. But there was something about it that felt still, not peaceful, not welcoming. Just still, like the moment before a whisper. Inside, the rooms were spacious but empty, silence pressing in from all sides. Dust covered the wooden floors, and the wallpaper peeled like old skin. There was little left from previous owners, an old rocking chair in the corner of the living room, a cracked mirror in the hallway, and a large, ornate wardrobe that smelled of lavender mixed with something much older. At first, Elise thought the chill in the air came from the outdated insulation, and the creaks and groans were just the sounds of wood settling, pipes cooling, or wind slipping through unseen cracks. Old houses made noises. She knew that. She told herself it was just the wood contracting, the pipes adjusting, or the wind whispering through the gaps. But that first night, as she lay on the mattress she had brought, placed in the center of the empty upstairs room, the silence felt different. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of something else. Something waiting. Moonlight cast strange shadows on the floor, shifting with the branches outside. Elise turned onto her side, closed her eyes, and tried to steady her breathing. But her heart had its own plan. It pounded in her chest like a warning. She told herself it was just nerves. A new place, a strange town, a tired mind still haunted by lingering ghosts. But no matter how exhausted she was, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't entirely alone. The next morning, the house was quiet. Normal. The wooden stairs creaked beneath her feet. Sunlight poured into the living room. She made coffee and walked through the rooms, mentally noting what needed fixing or replacing. In daylight, the house felt less frightening, though the air still carried a faint heaviness, like a breath held halfway. She met a neighbor that day, a frail old woman named Mrs. Harrow, who lived 3 houses down. She brought a plate of blueberry muffins and offered a timid smile. "You've moved into the McAllister house," the old woman said, not as a question, but a statement. "Yes," Elise replied, accepting the plate of muffins with gratitude. "It's very quiet here." "It is." Mrs. Harrow glanced toward the house behind Elise. "It's been abandoned for a long time, ever since that family— you probably don't want to hear old village stories." Elise's curiosity stirred. "What happened?" The old woman shook her head slowly. "Oh, nothing you need to worry about. Just village talk. Houses like that. They remember things that happened, that's all." That sentence lingered in Elise's mind as she stood alone in the living room that evening. Houses like that. They remember things. That night, the wind picked up. Branches scratched lightly against the windows like fingernails. The attic door let out a sudden groan. Elise curled beneath the blanket, trying to keep her breathing steady, counting the seconds between each creak. Then she heard it, so faint she thought she imagined it. Her name. Elise. A whisper. Soft and close, just outside her bedroom door. She sat up straight, heart pounding, straining to listen. Silence. Was it just the wind? A dream? A hallucination from an exhausted mind? She got up, turned on the hallway light, and opened the door. No one was there. The hallway was empty, the cracked mirror reflecting only her pale, bewildered face. She barely slept that night. The next day passed, without incident. Elise told herself the voice had been nothing more than stress and fatigue. She kept busy cleaning the kitchen, unpacking books, organizing drawers that hadn't been touched in years. But as night fell again, the unease returned, seeping in like a thin mist. The silence of the house didn't bring peace, it brought anticipation. She went to bed early, double-checked the locks, and curled up under the covers with a thin book she could hardly focus on. Sleep eventually came, but it was far from peaceful. At 3:17 a.m., she woke up again. A chill ran down her spine. The house groaned, as if exhaling a long breath. And then once more, the whisper came. Elise. This time the sound came from the ceiling above, the attic. She sat up, holding her breath. The voice was unmistakable. Her name stretched out like a delicate thread, soft and intimate. She stared up at the ceiling as if her eyes could pierce through the wooden boards. Her first instinct was to flee the room, but pride and curiosity held her in place. Instead, she grabbed her flashlight and quietly climbed the stairs leading to the attic. The narrow steps creaked beneath her feet. She paused at the door. It hadn't been opened since she moved in. With trembling hands, she reached for the doorknob. It turned easily, and the door let out a sharp creak. She shone the flashlight into the dusty space. Cobwebs sparkled in the beam of light. Old boxes, a broken cradle, a headless porcelain doll. But no one was there. Not a sound. She gently closed the attic door and stepped back, feeling foolish. But the next night, the voice returned. Elise. Clearer. Closer. This time, the whisper came from behind her. Elise spun around, heart-pounding, but again, nothing. Only the suffocating silence of the hallway. Now, she could no longer deny it. This wasn't stress. This wasn't her imagination. She began recording audio at night with her phone, placing it near her bed. The first few nights, there was nothing. Then on the third night, the whisper of her name appeared, faintly. She listened again and again. Elise. A whisper so faint it was nearly drowned by static, but it was real. She hadn't imagined it. She told no one. Who would believe her anyway? Instead, she took notes. The time, the location of the sound, the sensation, it was always cold, always close. Each night, the whisper grew bolder. Sometimes it came from the closet, sometimes from beneath the bed. Once, she was certain she felt breath on the back of her neck as her name was spoken. It never said anything else, only her name, as if it were trying to get her attention or remind her of something. And deep inside, a new fear began to take root. That maybe it wasn't just calling her. Maybe it was waiting for her to answer. On the sixth night, everything changed. The voice didn't stop at her name. That night, Elise awoke suddenly, drenched in sweat. The whisper returned, faint, fragile, but unmistakably trying to say more. Elise, she waited. The rain wouldn't stop. He never came back. A shiver crawled down her spine. She sat up, grabbed her notebook, and wrote down every word she could remember. Now, she was certain this wasn't a hallucination. These were fragments, pieces of a story someone or something desperately needed her to hear. In the following nights, the voice grew clearer, heavier with sorrow. It told broken pieces. A child left alone cried until there was no sound. There was a promise, but he lied. The letter never reached her. The rain, always the rain. It buried the truth. The story was still incomplete, still unclear. But it carried a deep sadness, a yearning that clung to Elise's mind long after the whisper had faded. The voice never screamed, never threatened. It simply mourned. And Elise listened. She spent her days trying to make sense of the fragmented sentences, drawing diagrams in her notebook. A timeline began to form, a woman, possibly a mother, waiting in the rain. A man who left. A child who cried until there was silence. Something tragic had happened here, something unresolved. The voice now sounded older, feminine, tired. Each time it echoed, Elise felt a strange ache in her chest, a sorrow that didn't belong to her, but somehow felt familiar. As if some forgotten part of her soul still remembered that pain. One evening, Elise sat in the living room with all the lights off. The whisper didn't come from any one direction, but from within the very walls. She was here. She waited by the window. He said he'd return before the rain. Her hands trembled. She knew the truth before it happened. She died with his name on her lips. Tears welled in Elise's eyes. She whispered gently into the darkness, "Who are you?" Silence. "Then, you know me." The answer shook her to the core. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she reread every note, every fragment, every word. The sadness had become familiar. Not just familiar, reminiscent. And that frightened her more than anything before. Elise couldn't let the whispers go unanswered. After so many nights of hearing disjointed stories, emotional pleas, and the final chilling declaration, "Because you are me," she felt a weight pressing on her, as if the very walls of the house were urging her to uncover the truth. The next morning she began her search, starting with the sparse paperwork that had come with the house. The deed transfer was recent, of course, but beyond that, the trail was faint and difficult. No forwarding address for the previous owner, no emergency contacts, not even the name of a real estate agent. Only the name of a law firm, now dissolved, that had handled the sale. Determined, she went to the local library and the town's records office. The house, it turned out, had stood since the late 19th century, passing through many owners. It had sat abandoned for the past 15 years, and before that, it had belonged to a reclusive woman named Margaret Hensley. No known heirs were recorded, no obituary, just a single note in a file stating that she had disappeared without notice. The neighbors, most of them elderly, remembered little. An old woman across the street, Mrs. Lantry, hesitated before speaking. "She kept to herself," she said. "We'd occasionally see her through the window with a child. Then nothing. One day, the curtains never opened again." "Did she move away?" Elise asked. Mrs. Lantry shook her head. "We thought so. But I always had a feeling." She trailed off, her eyes clouded with memory. Back at the house, Elise couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The whisper that had said, "The room no one enters, the key in the well." She had already found one hidden room, but something deep inside told her there was more. This house held secrets, and it wasn't done revealing them. She began measuring the walls, paying attention to odd gaps, places where the architecture didn't quite make sense. Her instincts kept drawing her back to the hallway behind the kitchen. It felt too short. The space between two rooms was narrower than it should have been. Tapping the wooden paneling produced a hollow sound, not the solid thud of plaster. She fetched a hammer. At first, only dust and crumbling debris, but then, a crack, a seam. The panel splintered to reveal a narrow door, its edges rough and uneven, as if someone had hastily sealed it shut. Elise's heart pounded. She stepped back, then pushed the secret door open. A small room lay beyond. Dust covered everything, so thick it choked out even the smell of old wood and time. The air was stifling, unnaturally heavy. A single bulb hung from a frayed cord, flickering once when she flipped the switch, then glowing steady. Inside the hidden room, a small bed with a faded blanket, a wooden rocking horse, stacks of picture books, a forgotten toy shelf, its once bright colors now dulled with age. But what took Elise's breath away was the wall, dozens of drawings pinned up with rusted nails. Childlike sketches, houses, rain, stick figures holding hands. In the corner, a picture frame lay face down on the floor. She picked it up, a black and white photograph, faded but still clear enough, a woman with gentle eyes holding a child. The woman's face, hauntingly familiar. Elise stood frozen, needing 15 minutes to gather herself. Then, slowly, she began looking around the room once more. She turned and looked toward a small table tucked into the far corner. Inside its drawer was a diary, the leather cover cracked with age, its pages yellowed and fragile. She opened to the first page. October 12th, 1953. "He hasn't written in 2 weeks. I'm starting to worry. The baby cries all night, as if she knows something. I sing lullabies to her, but it doesn't help. The rain still hasn't stopped." Elise flipped to another entry. October 20th, 1953. "They said it was an accident, that he won't be coming back, but I saw the telegram. The words didn't make sense. He promised he'd return. He loved us. I know he did." Another entry. November 1st, 1953. "Elise won't eat. She just stares out the window. Yesterday she said there was a man standing out there, but there was no one. I think we're being watched. Or haunted. I don't know. I'm so tired." Elise's breath caught. The child in the diary, named Elise, her name. She kept reading, turning the pages, the handwriting growing increasingly erratic, panicked. November 10th, 1953. I hear whispering, at night. They say my name. Sometimes I think they're warning me. Sometimes they sound like my voice. The final entry was just one blurred line smeared like it had been touched by tears. November 18th, 1953. If no one remembers us, do we disappear? Elise sat down on the floor, surrounded by dust, time, and sorrow. Her mind spun with questions. Was the woman in the photo Margaret Hensley? Was the child her, or someone she once had been? She stayed in the room for hours, rereading the diary entries, rearranging the toys, running her hand across the blanket as if it might awaken something. She didn't feel afraid, only sad. A deep, aching sadness that curled in her chest like a fog. That night, when the whispers returned, they were softer. Thank you. Then silence. The following days passed in a haze as Elise immersed herself in the diary and the secret room. Each page revealed more than the last, fragments of lives quietly unraveling behind closed walls. The entries gradually painted a clearer picture, and the whispers echoing through the house seemed to guide her from deep within. The mother's name was Margaret. Her husband Daniel had been a teacher before enlisting to fight in the Korean War. Their daughter, Elise, was born just before he left. The diary chronicled their daily life with intimate emotion, small joys, quiet loneliness, hidden fears. As Elise read further, the tone of the diary began to change. Margaret started to show signs of severe depression. After Daniel's death was confirmed by telegram, though Margaret never truly accepted it, she withdrew completely. The house grew quieter, the outside world more distant. Margaret wrote about hearing sounds, seeing shadows, feeling Daniel's presence by the window, especially on stormy nights. One entry etched itself into Elise's memory. November 5th, 1953. I lit candles in every room. I told Elise they were for her father. She doesn't understand yet, but I need to believe he can find his way home. Tonight, the wind howls like someone crying. The diary ended on November 18th with the line Elise had already read. If no one remembers us, do we disappear? But that wasn't truly the end. Tucked into the spine of the book, folded and nearly forgotten, was a small envelope, scrawled across the front in a child's handwriting. For Mommy. Elise's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter written in crayon, faded but still legible. Dear Mommy, I miss you. I waited like you said. I was brave and stayed in the room. I heard the wind and hugged Teddy. I think Daddy is sad too. He doesn't talk anymore. I drew a picture for you, but you didn't come to see it. Please come back to me soon. I'll be good, I promise. Love. Elise. Tears welled up in Elise's eyes. Those words pierced something deep within her, a pain unspoken, the heartbreak of a child frozen in time. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a sorrow so profound that it had etched itself into the house like a scar. The investigation uncovered one more entry, scattered between pages, written hastily in frantic handwriting. I can't take it anymore. She cries every night. I can't feed her. I can't face the silence. I walked out into the storm. I don't remember how far I went. I just wanted to disappear. I think I did. There was no name, but Elise knew it was Margaret's final words. A mother who loved her child deeply, but couldn't bear the crushing weight of grief and isolation. She didn't abandon her family out of cruelty. She collapsed under sorrow's unbearable burden. The whispers in the house had never been angry. They were mournful, pleading. They didn't seek vengeance. They only wanted to be remembered. With that understanding, Elise felt something shift. The house grew warmer, the air lighter. The whispers, once haunting sounds of the night, faded away. In their place came a silence. Not empty, but peaceful. She placed the letter back into the envelope and laid it gently on the small bed in the hidden room. She didn't light candles or recite prayers. She simply stood in silence, offering her understanding, her empathy. That night, for the first time, Elise slept soundly. No whispers, no flickering lights, no sense of being watched. In her dreams, she saw the room as it once had been, sunlight streaming through open curtains, toys gently swaying, a woman rocking a baby to sleep. Outside the window, a man waved from the garden. The house was no longer empty. The house was quieter than it had ever been during the weeks Elise had lived there. The oppressive silence had changed, no longer hollow or cold, but tender, like the final breath of someone finally at peace. For the first time since moving in, Elise no longer felt tense when night fell. She had come to understand the voices, the stories, the hidden sorrow buried within the walls. They weren't frightening or tormenting ghosts. They were echoes of love and loss, yearning to be remembered. That evening, as the last hues of sunset faded away, Elise sat in the living room with an old book and a cup of tea. The soft creaking of the old house wrapped around her, offering comfort rather than dread. She thought of Margaret, Daniel, and the child. Now she knew her name was also Elise, a family broken by grief, but never forgotten. Around midnight, just as Elise was about to get up and head to bed, a gentle sound drifted through the air. At first, it was a faint rustle, like pages turning in an invisible book. Then a voice, a whisper, passed softly through the room, clear and tender. "Thank you for hearing us." Elise choked up. This time, the voice was not sorrowful or pleading. It was calm, almost relieved, like a quiet farewell. She closed her eyes and let the words sink in, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. No other sound followed. The house remained silent, and for the first time, truly at peace. In the days that followed, Elise noticed subtle changes. The creaking of the old wood grew gentler, the breezes softer. The heaviness that once clung to the air seemed to lift, replaced by an invisible lightness. She often returned to the small hidden room, now cleaned and cared for. The toys and photographs were no longer remnants of tragedy, but symbols of a cherished life. The letter from the child was still safely kept, a reminder of voices that once echoed in the night. Elise understood that by listening, truly listening, she had freed the house from its silence. The stories, the memories, the sorrow that had been trapped for decades had waited for someone to give them a voice. And now, that voice was hers. As she prepared to leave the house for the first time in weeks, Elise felt a gentle presence brush past her, like a soft breeze carrying a whispered goodbye. She smiled, a single tear rolling down her cheek, not from fear or sadness, but from healing. The house, once filled with voices born from emptiness, was no longer hollow. It had become a place of remembrance, of release, and of peaceful stillness. Elise stepped outside into the morning sunlight, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders, ready to move forward with the stories she had uncovered. Stories that would never be forgotten again. The morning light filtered gently through the curtains as Elise packed away the last of her belongings. The old house, once heavy with silence and whispers, now felt like a fragile vessel holding memories, both sorrowful and tender. She carefully placed the worn diary into her bag, its yellowed, delicate pages filled with stories that refused to fade away. Leaving the house, a bittersweet feeling flooded her heart. Every corner echoed with memories of the past, the laughter of a child, the whispered prayers of a mother, the silent despair of a father. It seemed the very walls had absorbed those moments, holding on to them long after the voices fell silent. Elise knew she would never truly be able to leave those memories behind. As she closed the front door for the last time, a gentle breeze swept through the air, brushing against her like a soft sigh. It was an indescribable feeling, a presence both comforting and tinged with sadness. The house stood quietly behind her, no longer a place of mystery or fear, but a resting place for stories long waiting to be told. Though the voices had quieted, they had not vanished. They lived on in the silences within her mind, in the deep connection between past and present. Elise understood that those whispers were more than echoes. They were the souls of a family trapped in time, forever woven into the very fabric of the old house. The diary would remain with her, a tangible link to the lives once lived there, a reminder that even in loss, there is always a yearning to be heard and remembered. It was a legacy she vowed to protect, carrying their stories with reverence and compassion. As she walked away, Elise felt her pain ease, replaced by a quiet strength. The house had given her a gift, the chance to bear witness, to bring peace to voices long silenced. And in return, it left an indelible mark upon her heart. Wherever life would lead her, those whispered stories would live on within her, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the healing found in truly listening.